Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt like you were drowning in your own reflection? You thought you were seeing their soul, but you were actually staring at the parts of yourself you never learned to love. The person who broke you wasn't showing you who they were. They were showing you who you forgot you could be. And if you keep running from this truth, you'll spend your life chasing ghosts in other people's faces. Let me show you what happens when the mirror finally cracks. Elena met him on a Tuesday. She still remembers because Tuesdays had always felt empty before that moment. He looked at her like she held the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. For the first time in years, Elena felt necessary, important. Like her sensitivity wasn't a burden, but a gift someone actually wanted. You see, people, he told her over coffee that stretched into dinner, really see them. And Elena's heart opened like a flower recognizing sunlight. She didn't know she was signing an invisible contract. Her empathy in exchange for the illusion of being chosen. Her authentic self in exchange for being needed. The more Elena gave, the more lost she became. She started dimming her own light to make his shine brighter. She began translating her needs into a language he might understand, then forgetting her native tongue entirely. 3 months in, Elena would lie awake wondering when she had become a stranger to herself. When had loving someone started feeling like disappearing? Elena didn't know yet that she wasn't just loving a person. She was loving her own Carl Jung shadow. Take a breath. Does this sound familiar? Here's what no one tells you about empaths and narcissists. They're both running from the same wound. They've just chosen opposite directions. The empath learned early that love was conditional. Be good, be useful, be less. So they became professional healers, emotional translators, human band-aids. Their persona became, I am the one who saves. The narcissist learned that vulnerability was dangerous. Be impressive, be untouchable, be more. So they became professional performers, emotional black holes, human mirrors. Their persona became, I am the one who takes. But here's the twist that changes everything. What the empath calls giving is often just sophisticated people-pleasing. What they call love is sometimes just familiar chaos. Their shadow, the parts Carl Jung said we hide from ourselves, whispers the forbidden truth. I want to be special too. I want to be chosen. I want to matter without having to earn it. Picture 2 people meeting in a room lined with mirrors. Each thinks they're looking at the other person, but they're only seeing reflections of their own unmet needs. The empath sees someone who needs them. Finally, someone who makes their purpose clear. The narcissist sees someone who adores them. Finally, someone who confirms their worth. Neither sees the other person at all. Maya thought she was drawn to confident men. What she didn't realize was that she was addicted to the feeling of being the exception to someone's emotional unavailability. Every time she broke through to his softer side, she felt like she'd won a prize she'd been competing for her entire childhood. Her father had been distant. Her mother had been overwhelmed. Maya learned that love meant proving you deserved it. So when David pulled away, Maya didn't see abandonment. She saw a project. When he was cruel, she didn't see cruelty. She saw pain that needed healing. Her empathy became a pair of rose-colored glasses that turned red flags into romantic challenges. This is how the Carl Jung shadow works in relationships. We don't choose people. We choose familiar patterns dressed up as people. The parts of ourselves we've rejected, the needy child, the angry teenager, the selfish adult. These don't disappear. They hide in our unconscious and draw us toward people who will act them out for us. Maya couldn't admit she was hungry for attention, so she chose someone who consumed it. David couldn't admit he was terrified of being truly known, so he chose someone who would accept his mask as reality. The empath becomes addicted to the cycle: rejection, pursuit, temporary acceptance, rejection again. It feels like love because it feels like home. But what if I told you that the person who triggers you the most is actually your greatest teacher? What if the narcissist in your life is just holding up a mirror to the parts of your Carl Jung shadow you haven't integrated yet? Pause the video. Look in a mirror, literally. Ask yourself, what am I trying to heal in them that I need to heal in myself? Here's the question that shattered Elena's world and rebuilt it. Who are you when no one needs you to save them? She sat in her car after another exhausting conversation with him, and this question rose from somewhere deeper than her mind. Her hands started shaking because she realized she didn't know. For 32 years, Elena had defined herself by her usefulness to other people's pain. She was the friend who stayed up all night talking you through heartbreak, the daughter who managed her mother's anxiety, the partner who translated her needs into whatever language would hurt the least. But who was she when she wasn't fixing, saving, or healing? The silence in that car was deafening. She tried to remember the last time she'd made a decision based purely on what she wanted, not on what would make someone else happy or what would avoid conflict. She couldn't. She tried to remember the last time she'd expressed anger without immediately apologizing for it. Nothing. She tried to remember who she was before she learned that love meant making herself smaller. The memory felt like trying to recall a dream after waking. That's when Elena realized the terrifying truth: she had given away so many pieces of herself to other people that she no longer knew what belonged to her. Carl Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But Elena was about to discover that this wasn't just a nice philosophical idea. It was the key to her prison. She made a list of everything that frustrated her about him: his need to always be right, his inability to apologize genuinely, his way of making everything about himself, his resistance to being vulnerable, his expectation that she would manage his emotions, his tendency to disappear when things got difficult. Then Elena did something that changed her life. She asked herself, how do I do these same things? The answers came like punches to the stomach. His need to always be right. Elena realized she had her own way of being right through emotional intelligence. She was always right about what people needed, what they were feeling, how they should handle things. Her rightness was gentler, but it was still rightness. His inability to apologize genuinely. Elena apologized constantly, but never for the things that actually mattered. She apologized for taking up space, for having needs, for existing inconveniently. But she never apologized for the ways she tried to control people through her giving. His way of making everything about himself. Elena made everything about everyone else, which was just another way of making it about herself. She was the star of her own martyrdom story. His resistance to vulnerability. Elena shared emotions constantly, but never her real needs. She was vulnerable about safe things, sadness, fear, love for others, but she was completely defended against showing her anger, her selfishness, her desire to be chosen without having to earn it, his expectation that she would manage his emotions. Elena expected herself to manage everyone's emotions. She took responsibility for how her words landed. how her presence affected others, how her needs impacted the people around her. His tendency to disappear when things got difficult. Elena disappeared too, but inwardly. When conflict arose, she abandoned herself to keep the peace. This realization hit Elena like walking into a wall she didn't see coming. The person she had been trying to heal was herself. The person she had been trying to save was herself. The person she had been trying to love into wholeness was herself. Carl Jung called this projection. When we see in others what we cannot see in ourselves. But projection isn't just seeing our good qualities in other people. It's also seeing our disowned shadow qualities and trying to heal them from the outside. Think of it like this. Imagine you're dying of thirst in a desert. You see water everywhere, shimmering, beautiful, life-saving water. But every time you reach for it, you realize it's a mirage. The thing that looks like salvation is actually just light bouncing off the very thing that's killing you. This is what happens when we try to heal our childhood wounds through other people. We're reaching for mirages in a desert of broken mirrors. Elena had been seeing her own abandoned self in him and trying to love it back to life. But you can't heal your own wounds by healing someone else's. You can't find your own worth by proving your worth to someone who can't see it. You can't come home to yourself by making someone else your home. Here's what nobody wants to hear about empathic people. Sometimes our empathy is a defense mechanism. Sometimes our giving is a way of controlling. Sometimes our love is a way of avoiding having to receive love. Alexandra discovered this when she asked herself a brutal question: what am I getting out of this dynamic? At first, she was offended by her own question. How could there be a payoff in being hurt, used, taken for granted? But when she sat with the question honestly, the answers came. Being needed meant she never had to worry about being abandoned. If she was indispensable, she was safe. Being the giver meant she never had to feel the vulnerability of receiving. She could love without risking being loved back imperfectly. Being the healer meant she got to feel superior in a way that looked like humility. She was the good one, the conscious one, the one who had it all figured out. Being the victim meant she never had to take full responsibility for her own life. Everything wrong could be blamed on someone else's dysfunction. Being the savior meant she got to avoid looking at her own need for saving. This is the shadow of empathy, the ways we use our sensitivity to avoid our own healing. The ways we use our giving to control outcomes. The ways we use our love to buy safety. Marcus was 35 when he finally saw it. He was arguing with his partner about something trivial, whether to get pizza or Chinese food, and suddenly he heard himself. The desperation in his voice, the way he was treating his partner's preference like a personal rejection. He stopped mid-sentence and said, "Oh my God, this isn't about food at all." That's the moment the Carl Jung shadow integration begins, when you stop asking, "Why are you doing this to me?" and start asking, "What am I doing to myself?" When you realize that the person triggering you is just activating wounds that were already there. Marcus realized he had been trying to heal his childhood feeling of not mattering by making every small preference a test of love. He had been asking his partner to prove over and over that Marcus's needs mattered because Marcus himself didn't believe they did. The narcissist wasn't creating his wound, they were just poking it. This is the moment that feels like dying when you realize that the person you thought could save you never existed. When you understand that the love you thought you were fighting for was actually a projection of the love you needed to give yourself. When Elena finally saw David clearly, not as her potential savior or her project or her soulmate, but as a wounded person doing his best with the tools he had. She felt a grief so deep, it seemed bottomless. She wasn't just grieving the end of the relationship. She was grieving the fantasy that someone else could heal her childhood. She was grieving the story that her worth could be proven through her usefulness. She was grieving the belief that love meant losing herself. But here's what Elena discovered in that grief on the other side of the death of the illusion was the birth of something real. When she stopped seeing David as her missing piece, she could finally see the pieces of herself she had given away. When she stopped trying to be his salvation, she could start being her own. The most counterintuitive part of this process is that letting go of the fantasy relationship often opens the door to a real one, either with the same person or with someone new. But here's the catch: you can only have a real relationship when you're willing to lose the fantasy one. You can only be truly chosen when you stop trying to earn being chosen. You can only be genuinely loved when you stop trying to buy love with your usefulness. You can only receive when you stop trying to control the giving. As Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists, but what you accept transforms." The narcissist in your life isn't your enemy. They're your teacher. They're showing you exactly where you need to heal, exactly what you need to reclaim, exactly who you need to become. If you're feeling a tremor of recognition right now, that's your soul trying to get your attention. Don't look away. This recognition is the beginning of your freedom. This pain is the labor of your rebirth. This breakdown is actually your breakthrough. The question isn't whether you'll survive this realization. The question is, who will you choose to become on the other side of it? Elena didn't leave him immediately. That's not how awakening works. Instead, she started doing something radical. She started asking herself the questions she'd been asking him. What do I need right now? What would make me feel safe? What part of me am I trying to save through saving him? For the first time in years, Elena turned her empathy inward. The first time she asked herself, "What do I need?" The silence was so profound, it scared her. She had been meeting everyone else's needs for so long that her own needs had become like a language she used to speak fluently but had forgotten. So she started small. Did she want coffee or tea? Did she want to watch a movie or read a book? Did she want to talk or be quiet? These tiny choices felt revolutionary because they were the first decisions she'd made in years that weren't filtered through someone else's needs. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming who you really are instead of who you think you should be. It's not about fixing yourself. It's about meeting yourself. Elena started practicing what she called micro-returns. Tiny moments throughout the day when she would check in with herself instead of scanning the room for who needed her attention. At work, instead of immediately asking her colleague how she was doing, Elena paused and asked herself, "How am I doing?" On the phone with her mother, instead of automatically absorbing her mother's anxiety, Elena took a breath and asked herself, "What do I need to stay grounded right now?" With him, instead of reading his mood and adjusting herself accordingly, Elena started asking, "What is mine to feel right now and what belongs to him?" This is how you start retrieving the pieces of yourself you've scattered across other people's lives. Tyler had never heard the term self-loyalty until he was 38 years old and in therapy after his third empathic burnout. His therapist asked him, "When was the last time you kept a promise to yourself?" Tyler stared at her blankly. He kept promises to everyone else religiously. He was the friend who always showed up, the employee who never missed deadlines, the partner who remembered every anniversary. But promises to himself, he broke those constantly. He promised himself he'd set boundaries, then gave in the moment someone was disappointed. He promised himself he'd take breaks, then worked through lunch to help colleagues. He promised himself he'd speak up about his needs, then stayed quiet to keep the peace. Tyler realized that self-betrayal had become so normal, he didn't even notice it anymore. He was loyal to everyone except the person who mattered most, himself. The first time Elena said, "I can't talk right now, I'm taking care of myself," he was confused, then angry, then dismissive. "You're being selfish," he said. And Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years: relief, because she realized that being called selfish for having needs meant she was finally developing a self-worth protecting. But setting boundaries felt like learning a new language. Elena had spent so long being fluent in accommodation that she didn't know how to speak in self-protection. Her first boundaries were clumsy. She over-explained them, apologized for them, justified them until they barely existed. "I'm sorry, but I can't talk tonight because I'm really tired, and I know that's probably disappointing, and I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I just need some space. Is that okay?" Gradually, Elena learned that boundaries don't require explanation. They require conviction. "I'm not available tonight. That doesn't work for me. I won't be discussing this anymore." Each boundary felt like a small death, the death of her identity as the person who never said no. But what was being born was her ability to choose love instead of needing to prove it. Marcus had always been the yes person. Yes to overtime. Yes to emotional labor that wasn't his job. Yes to relationships that drained him. His journey back to himself started with a sacred no. "No, I can't listen to your relationship problems right now. I'm working on my own. No, I can't lend you money again. I'm learning to take care of myself first. No, I won't explain my boundaries. They're not up for negotiation." Each no felt like death at first, but what was dying wasn't his goodness. It was his addiction to being needed. What was being born was his ability to choose love instead of needing to prove it. Here's what Elena discovered on her journey back to herself. Healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world taught you to be afraid of your own needs. The 3 practices of integration. Practice 1. The mirror journal. Every morning, Elena started writing to herself like she was her own best friend. Not about him, not about the relationship, about her. What do I need today? What part of me feels neglected? What would self-love look like in this moment? Try this. Write yourself a love letter, not a pep talk, not a to-do list. A letter that says, "I see you, I hear you, you matter." Practice 2. Dream listening. Carl Jung believed dreams were letters from our unconscious. Elena started paying attention to hers. She dreamed of locked doors she couldn't open, houses with rooms she'd forgotten existed, gardens overgrown with weeds, but still holding beautiful flowers underneath. Her psyche was showing her the work unlock what she'd closed off. Remember what she'd forgotten. Tend to what she'd neglected. What are your dreams trying to tell you about the parts of yourself waiting to be reclaimed? Practice 3. Compassionate boundaries. Elena learned the difference between boundaries that punish and boundaries that protect. Punishing boundaries. You hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you back. Protective boundaries. I'm not available for this dynamic anymore because I'm choosing to love myself. The narcissist in your life isn't your enemy. They're just someone who hasn't learned to love themselves yet. and that's not your job to fix. Healing isn't linear. Elena found herself cycling through the same patterns, but with more awareness each time. Like climbing a spiral staircase, you revisit the same views, but from a higher perspective. Some days she fell back into people-pleasing, but now she noticed it happening and could choose differently. Some days she felt guilty for having needs, but now she recognized the guilt as an old program running and could update the software. This is what Carl Jung shadow integration actually looks like: not perfection, but consciousness. Not never falling, but falling with awareness and getting up with more self-compassion. You don't graduate from being human. You just become more human. Take a moment right now. Put your hand on your heart. Feel it beating. That's your life force saying, I'm here, I matter, I'm worth coming home to. When you finally see the narcissist as a mirror instead of a destination, something magical happens. You stop being trapped in their reflection and start seeing yourself clearly. Elena's story doesn't end with her leaving him or staying with him. It ends with her remembering that she was never broken in the first place. She was just looking for herself in all the wrong mirrors. As Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The person who hurt you the most gave you the greatest gift. They showed you exactly where you needed to heal. If this video found you, it's not an accident. Your soul is ready to come home. In the comments, share one thing you're ready to stop seeking in other people and start giving to yourself. Your story might be the mirror someone else needs to see. Remember, you are not too sensitive. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are a soul remembering how to love yourself as fiercely as you've loved everyone else. Welcome home.